Hey TYT Politics, this is Nomi Const, investigative reporter. I am live here in Arizona, getting ready, with the dog in the background, getting ready to head out to the DNC chair vote in Atlanta. But I wanted to catch you guys up on a story that I've been working on while the Democratic story has been going on, and that is about these 8 Democrats in New York State who are Democrats, come from Democratic districts, who are voting with Republicans. They're known as the Independent Democratic Conference. That's what they've labeled themselves as. They've been around for the past couple of years, and they've grown in size. It used to be just a couple, and then it moved up to 8 Democrats. Progressives are finally organizing. Democrats are finally organizing. They're going to these members' town hall meetings, hundreds. They'll pack the rooms, and then they'll be outside, a couple of hundred will be outside of the town halls, voicing their frustration and anger that they were elected as Democrats and they're voting with Republicans. Now, there was some news yesterday because Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is a Democrat and was elected as a Democrat, has been rumored to be a presidential hopeful for 2020. He has been sort of funny about this IDC. That's what it's called. It's been reported that he has sided with the IDC, that he has a close relationship with its leader, Jeff Kline, who's a state senator in New York. And what that means is this is a form of triangulation, essentially. A lot of people have voiced frustration that Governor Cuomo is triangulating and trying to use this independent Democratic conference to leverage against Republicans so that he can work with Republicans, pass a couple of progressive pieces of legislation, look like a progressive hero, when the reality is that New York is supposed to be a democratically controlled state. So if those Democrats were part of their own caucus, you'd get a lot more progressive legislation passed. So Ken Lovett in the Daily News reported that Governor Cuomo had met with a couple of leaders at the governor's mansion and basically said that the New York State Democratic Senate leaders needed to calm down over the IDC, that things were getting out of hand. Of course, getting out of hand because the past couple of weeks there have been protesters at the IDC town hall meetings. So, these quotes in this article, The Daily News, by Ken Lovett are hilarious because there may be 6 or 7 anonymous quotes, except for one who is the spokesperson for the Senate Democrats. And essentially, he's trying to defend himself, Governor Cuomo, and saying that, the Democrats need to win more seats. Even though the Democrats have won more seats and got the Democratic Party out of debt. This is his defense. It's also his defense that the IDC is passing progressive legislation. Well, I have a list, actually, of legislation that the IDC has held up, because their defense all along has been that they have been supporting, things like the DREAM Act and the minimum wage when they were in opposition to it a couple of years ago. So a couple of the things that the IDC Democrats, who caucus with Republicans, have blocked are the Women's Equality Act to codify Roe versus Wade in New York, LGBT legislation to protect LGBT people from discrimination in New York, voting reform, including early voting and automatic voter registration. Remember the issues in the primary. Remember New York being a state where registration was very, very early, and so many independents and progressives and young people weren't able to vote in the primary. Well, guess what? The IDC members were the ones that held up the reform legislation. Criminal justice reform, including raise the age. Campaign finance reform, including public financing of campaigns, has been held up in New York State because of these 8 Democrats caucusing with Republicans. And of course, ethics reform. Albany has been full of corruption. All you got to do is Google Albany and corruption, and you will see all the corruption. They wanted to pass ethics reform. It could have been passed because the New York Assembly is Democratic controlled, and the Senate is supposed to be democratically controlled. So, the defense from the IDC has been they're progressive, and progressive things would not be passed without them. But the reality is that they're blocking more legislation, more progressive legislation in a state that should be democratically controlled. Now, what I think about this, why this is really important right now on a national level, why you guys should care about these independent Democrats who are caucusing with Republicans, and from Democratic-controlled districts with 80% turnout of Democrats, 80% registration of Democrats. Why it matters to you is because the Republicans are controlling state houses everywhere. They have had a strategy to take control of the state houses and the legislatures and win against Democrats across the board. There are a couple of states where Democrats could control and do control the state houses. California, New York, perfect example. Now, the second level of their strategy, these Republicans nationwide, their strategy, is to take on the democratically controlled states and work with the weak Democrats, meaning the Democrats willing to caucus with Republicans. So even though New York State should be a democratically controlled state and should be passing all this legislation and be on the forefront of progressive issues and should lead the charge on these issues and these forms of legislation nationwide, they can't because there are 8 Democrats who are caucusing with Republicans. And that is part of the Republican strategy. And so when you see Governor Cuomo, an elected Democrat, endorsing that strategy, this is a man who wants to run for president. So what does that mean? How are Democrats nationwide going to respond to Governor Cuomo, who is essentially enabling a Republican strategy, a national Republican strategy to take over state houses and to take over state houses that should be controlled by Democrats? This is tricky, a tricky area. It's really dangerous territory. And if Democrats aren't able to organize and counter it, and possibly, as they're discussing, primary these independent Democrats, then essentially New York State, which should be leading the charge on progressive issues, is now controlled by Republicans because you have a governor who's an elected Democrat who is working with the Republicans and says he hasn't been, by the way. But I have a quote from a piece a couple of months ago that ran in the local New York stateofpolitics.com is what it is. It's a cable news network where he was talking about Governor Cuomo had met with Republican leaders. And this is a source, Senator Jim Tedisco, who had said that Governor Cuomo said, quote, he mentioned he had $19 million in the bank. He mentioned that he could have used that money very aggressively on behalf of Democrats, helping Democrats, and that he didn't. He mentioned that he could have done a lot more in campaigning for his fellow Democrats, but he didn't. But he also mentioned that there are realities and that he's a Democrat and this is the senator, Republicans. So essentially, Governor Cuomo is saying he could have been much more active in helping elect more Democrats in the Senate, but he didn't. That he had $19 million in an account to go and help Democrats get elected, but he didn't. Because he's using this form of triangulation, this Clintonian way of tactics for the Democrats that doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. If anything, we know after the 2016 election that this doesn't work. So what is the path forward for Governor Cuomo? He's up for re-election, and he wants to run for president. He's got $19 million in the bank. He's been fundraising on the side, giving national speeches. He's a very charming, funny guy. He's affable, but the reality is that he is working with Republicans. And not only is he working with Republicans, he's working with the independent Democrats who are doing this for power, for larger offices, for the perks, for the attention, whatever it is. These are all the things that have been reported out. And Governor Cuomo is effectively enabling a Republican strategy to take control of state houses. So I will be continuing to report this. There's some money issues behind this as well. We're going to keep going for the next couple of months on this story, especially because there's budget talks coming up in a couple of months, and that always gets very dramatic in New York State. But New York State is very important. And I think for TYT members and viewers, this is an area where you can organize. And frankly, I think people are organizing and showing up at these town halls, telling these local leaders, these 8 Democrats who are caucusing with Republicans, that this is a no-go. So we're going to continue talking about this issue. It's something that a lot of people haven't been reporting on at the national level for a while, but we're going to do it. We have a lot of interviews coming up. I just posted something on my Facebook page, and it's on our list of a quick summary of what the IDC is, and just wanted to give you that quick update. Thanks, guys.